Well, my story's, first of all, life in balance, becoming whole. And I just wanted to say that I really don't feel that life can be in balance. And to me, balance means like total health. I feel like you're either, can everybody hear me okay? You're either moving away from health or balance, or you're moving toward it. And so hopefully we're moving toward it more than we are moving away from it. And at one point in my life, particularly 23 years ago when I had turned 33, I was the mother of 2 young children, and I was born in Maine, but I was living across the country in Portland, Oregon. And I just had my second child. She was 5 months old. And I was diagnosed with bone cancer. I was saddened, I was depressed, and shocked. And because of that, I had to have my leg amputated. I went to my doctor and I said to him, I'm a problem solver, and I've always been very curious, what could have caused this? And I knew I wasn't eating the best. And I had actually kind of been interested in nutrition, but not really, I thought I was healthy. I really believed that I was healthy. I was told that I came from strong stock. I was born here in Maine. My mother was French-Canadian, lived here a few generations, and really hardy. I believed that health was something you were born with. And so, so when I was diagnosed with the cancer, I went to my doctor and I said, do you think this could have something to do with the way I'm eating? Now, this is 23 years ago. And my doctor, who was an osteo-oncologist, said, Americans have the best diet in the world. And, and at that point, I knew that something was a little off. I didn't know what I know now, but I knew that I had eaten a lot of sugar in my past. When I was 13, my mother made beautiful meals, but when I went to junior high and had my own lunch money, I started to stop at the store and buy a bag of chips, some kind of junky candy, a cream horn, and a tab. And that was my lunch for 4 years. So at that point I started moving away from health, moving not toward health. I was moving away from health.
May?
Uh-huh.
I'm wondering if you held the mic a little bit farther away, it might be more comfortable or more intimate for us.
Is it too muffled? Is it better if I speak without it?
Can everybody hear her?
Can you hear back in the back table?
How about the recording?
How many for with
Either
the
way,
microphone? Or
Maybe not
is
so
that
close.
is that better? Is
Yeah,
that
that's
better?
good. Yeah.
Okay, I know some you have to almost like put your mouth on it. And, okay.
I know, they're all
Yeah.
different. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Susan.
Sure.
And so, so in that moment, I knew that Americans don't have the best diet in the world, or and I think it's gotten a little bit worse in the past 20 years. But that began my search for information, and at that time, I went from a healthy 33-year-old to a young mother who had just lost a leg from cancer, which was a hard thing, but I got through that. I even learned to ski on one leg, and I searched and searched for a prosthetic leg that would fit. So I had to really kind of come out of myself and really be an advocate for myself to do all those things, especially to find a prosthetic leg that would fit me. So anyway, so at the time, I did do a lot of reading. I started reading more about nutrition, and I changed my diet a little bit. As time went on, I kind of got back to my, not the habits where I was eating the cream horn and the hot tamale candy and all that. But I did go back to, the typical American diet, basically. But I did eat better because I had 2 small children who I did want to set an example for to eat better. So as time went on, my life got back to normal, and I moved back to Maine, which was a really great thing because my mother was actually dying at the time, and I wanted to spend more time with her. After she passed away, actually before that, in the spring, before I moved back to Portland, I was taking a shower one day and I found a lump in my breast. And at that moment, I had a gut feeling that something was wrong. So I went to my doctor, and I had mammograms for 5 years prior to finding the lump, but nothing ever showed up as suspicious in the mammogram, so they weren't really all that concerned. Although I could palpate a lump, which was actually pretty big. So time went on, and I'd be taking a shower, and every time I'd wash that area, I'd get a gut feeling like, that's not right. And so when I got back to Maine, I made another appointment, went to another doctor that was basically told the same thing. And so finally I just couldn't ignore that, and I went to a breast specialist. But before that, they sent me for a sonogram. And during that sonogram, the technician said, I think that you better have a biopsy. And at that point, even before the results came back, I just had a gut feeling that it was cancer. It came back, the results came back as stage 4 cancer. I went through a mastectomy. I was recommended a bone marrow transplant at the time. This was 15 years ago, and they were recommending that for women with breast cancer. And I probably would have done it, but I had a gut feeling that it would kill me. Now, that was my intuition. At that time, I didn't really know that, but it was so strong that I couldn't ignore that. And so I did more research. I went for a second opinion at another, big cancer institute in Boston. They told me the same thing. And then I ended up going to Tufts University Medical Center. The doctor there said to me, I'm in on the research. The bone marrow transplant for breast cancer looked promising at first, but as time went on, we looked at all the results, and we decided that at first it looked promising, but then it wasn't really as effective as we thought. So what I recommend is not that. What he also said was, your gut feeling was correct, and I'm glad that you followed it, because in 2 months we're announcing that we're no longer going to be doing that here either. So that was my survival instinct, and I really encourage you to pay attention to those feelings, because I truly feel that saved my life. I did the chemo, I did the radiation, but even with that, I was told by doctors, more than one, with long, sad faces, that my cancer would probably return within a year of the treatment. So I didn't want that to happen. So I started reading. I asked my doctor, do you know of anybody that practices medicine but also alternative medicine? She couldn't really tell me, she didn't have any friends or know of anybody that did at the time. But she recommended me to a naturopathic doctor who I went to visit, and she really didn't have a lot to offer me either. But as I was walking out of her office, she said a little bit hesitantly, some women have been helped by the macrobiotic diet. And in that instant, it was like my light bulb moment. I can't think of any better way to describe it, but I had a knowing because I'm an avid reader, and I had actually read a book in 1982, just because my father recommended it, about a man that had healed his pancreatic cancer, which is an incurable form of cancer, through a macrobiotic diet. I had read the book, found it interesting, thought it was amazing, believed it, didn't really think that it pertained to me because I was born healthy. But the seed was planted, so you never know when you're going to use the information. But in that instance when the doctor recommended that, it was like, I know about that. And so within a week, I had contacted a woman that taught cooking classes. I had bought a few books, and I had also started the chemotherapy treatment. I felt like I hit the ground running. And I got through the chemotherapy treatments, and I had a friend that was a nurse, and she was a mother of one of my daughter's friends. And every time she would come to my house, either to pick Cammie up or to drop off her daughter, we'd chat for a few minutes. And one day I told her that I had stopped taking sleeping pills because I didn't need them anymore. And she said, Meg, you need to write down all these things because you should write a book about this. So every time I would see her, she would say, I would tell her something that had improved in my life. I wasn't trying to achieve these certain things, but I feel like they were the good side effects. I had a history of ulcerative colitis, really bad ulcerative colitis for 5 years prior to getting breast cancer. That cleared up probably within 3 months, completely. I had been on medications for allergies, nasal allergies. I was always either squirting something up my nose or taking antihistamines. That decreased by 75%. I took medication for a heart arrhythmia. With my doctor's blessings, I was able to go off that. So a lot of things that I hadn't expected really started to change in my life. And things started to improve, including my cancer didn't come back within that first year, nor the second year. Now it's been 15 years. And in the meantime, the joy came back into my life. I was able to, from the time that I got the bone cancer to the time that I got the breast cancer, I always felt like I had a black cloud hanging over my head. But after I studied the macrobiotics, which is now called plant-based diet, are any of you familiar with a plant-based diet? Well, a plant-based diet is basically a diet which is centered on plants rather than a meat-based diet. And so what I eat now are lots of vegetables, whole grains, beans and bean products, and I really try to minimize the processed foods. And research came out, well, actually, it has been done for the past 40 years. A researcher at Cornell University named Dr. T. Colin Campbell, and he has actually spoken here in Portland, to a group of doctors. And so he did 40 years of government-funded research that shows that plant-based diets are the best thing for our health, basically for the conditions diabetes, cancer, heart disease, and even MS. So diseases that are caused by inflammation. So we're hearing a lot about that now, but back then, you know, the macrobiotic diet was what I followed. But now it's much broader and I want to say a little bit more user-friendly. And so today, 15 years later, I can truly say that I'm healthier than I was 15 years ago. And I attribute that to the way that I'm eating now, the plant-based way. And so, yeah. And so today I counsel other people, mostly women, who were once in the same place that I was. And I've developed a 6-month program. I hope someday to start a school, an actual physical school in Maine. And I really believe that this was the handout, the take home, that even small steps can make a difference. Some of the things that you can start doing are simply decreasing your portions of animal protein. If you eat, you know, animal protein, meaning chicken, meat, eggs, cut it by half and increase your vegetables. And then try replacing some of your meat meals, maybe 2 meals a week, with a bean dish. So it really doesn't have to be difficult. And so those are just, I have more steps than that, but if you want, put your name on the email list and I'll send out just the PDF of even small changes can make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Meg.
Thank you.
And she has also generously said that she will put these on the silent auction for the state.
Oh,
So thank you so much, Meg. And
Did you want to take any questions? I just
Oh,
wanted to
yes.
ask.
Yeah,
Yes.
I was thinking of Q&A.
Okay.
My question is, when you eat a vegan diet, basically is what you're talking about, it's pretty hard in our society. I mean, Portland is fairly enlightened as far as offering vegan dishes, but you know, when you go to somebody's house, or if you're dining with your partner or your spouse, and you know, can you just speak to the challenges that come with having a very limited diet, particularly when people are going to McDonald's and whatever?
Well, that's a good question because the example that I can give you is for tonight's meal. I was told that it was a vegetarian meal, and vegetarian, it can include eggs and dairy, and so I don't have those things in my diet. So what I said was I asked, does it have eggs and dairy? And so she said, well, I can check. And she checked, and they said, oh, we can make it without the eggs and the dairy. And so that was very easy to do, and so they could accommodate that. And what I told her was that if they couldn't, I would just be happy to have something before I came, and then I would have the salad. So I don't think it has to be difficult. And I think the thing is, if you're determined to make it work, you know, nowadays you can Google vegan or vegan-friendly restaurants, and I really like the vegan-friendly restaurants because I feel that those are the more old-fashioned. Maybe they came about in the old-fashioned in the 80s, where the granola-type restaurants where they really knew how to cook healthy food. And they're still doing that, but now they're even catering to healthier foods. So they already know how to cook. So for them to take it one step further and make it with no animal protein and make it tasty and nutritious, you know, using the whole grains and using the vegetables. So I usually look for vegan-friendly restaurants, even more so than vegan restaurants. But I do things like You know, sometimes I'll bring, if I know there's not going to be enough vegetables for me, because I really think vegetables are the key, I will bring some with me and have it before I, you know, go into a function.
Where does fish fit in, or can it fit in?
Yeah, that's actually a good question, because my macrobiotic diet actually included fish, a small amount of white meat fish, about every 7 to 10 days. And I no longer eat fish because I feel like I have the whole thing down packed now. But my husband does. And so that does make it a little bit easier to have the fish. And so, but it's not an all or nothing venture either. I mean, even just moving toward a more plant-based diet is going to be a healthier, is, you know, something, a healthier way of being and eating for you. Yeah.
Do you ever worry about getting enough protein?
No.
I was given a gift to a spa, and so I recently had a facial, and the woman, I think they lie to you, and they always say, "Oh, you have such lovely skin." And, but anyway, she said, "Oh, I can always tell a vegan. Their hair is brittle and their skin is pasty. They're just not getting enough protein." So, what's with that?
Yeah, I think that's a myth. Either that, or if somebody is following a vegan diet but they're not eating the right things.
Yeah.
I mean, because you can follow a vegan diet but eat, you know, a lot of things that are just simple carbohydrates and sugar. And I'm sorry, it's like the question was, so
How to get enough
how do you get
protein.
your protein? There is plenty of protein in beans and bean products like tofu and tempeh. There's protein in whole grains like quinoa, brown rice, millet, barley. There's actually even protein in vegetables. And we actually get too much protein in our diet. And did you know that that's why we have osteoporosis? Because of the acidity of our blood. What happens is we eat so much animal protein, it makes our blood acidic, and what happens is our body has to keep the balance in our blood, and so it calls for a buffer for that acidity. And where do you think that comes from? Your bones. So what we need to do is we need to keep the calcium that we already have in our bones, and not have too much animal protein. So you actually don't need as much protein as you've been told for the past 50 years. But that's what they believe. 50 years ago, they believed that protein was the biggest and the best thing, and they really pushed it. But the man that did the research on the plant-based diet, at that time, he believed that too. And he was starting out his career at Cornell, and he was actually sent to the Philippines to study a group of children who were getting liver cancer caused by aflatoxins, which are in like moldy peanuts. And some of the kids were getting liver cancer and others weren't. They were all exposed, but some were getting it. And he was going there because he wanted to do research and prove that it was because they weren't getting enough animal protein. And early on in his research, it showed the opposite, that it was the kids that had access to the animal protein, the kids that came from wealthier families, basically. And so that started his research, and over 40 years, he continued to do research. But in the beginning, he believed that, you know, protein and eating meat and any kind of animal protein was what people needed to do. And anyway, and so his book, The China Study, came out in 2006, and that was basically about his research called The China Project. So anyway, so that's the answer to your question. You know, am I afraid that we don't get enough protein? No, because we actually get too much protein, and we don't need. And has anybody ever heard of any of your friends, are they protein deficient?
It would be front page news if if that were the case. Yeah. So. Oh, go ahead.
Another myth is the calcium too. A lot of women worry that they're going to get enough calcium if they cut out dairy.
Yeah.
You will with the leafy greens and other things in that diet, because if you don't have dairy in your diet,
Yes.
you'll get enough calcium.
Yeah, and that's, she said, where do you get your calcium? And that's another myth too, that you need to have milk to get your calcium. And actually you don't. Milk doesn't normally have calcium in it, it's just added to the milk. And so that's also a myth. And actually now they're, you know, at Cornell now, they now offer a program called the China Study. It's a series of classes that you can take, but it actually points towards milk as being a cause of osteoporosis, and so and breast cancer, yeah. Dr. T. Colin Campbell, he stated at that luncheon for the Mercy Hospital doctors that casein is actually, the casein, which is the protein in milk, is actually the most carcinogenic substance on the planet. And the studies show that when you have a diet that's over 10% of your calories in animal protein, that the cancer rate starts going up when it goes above 10%. And so.
What about too much soy?
Yeah, actually, studies are actually showing that soy is good for you, but there's been a lot of misinformation about soy too, as far as, but they say now that the soy, and there's actually a lot of good information on the Physician Committee for Responsible Medicine website. Dr. Neil Bernard, who is, has been promoting a plant-based vegan diet for probably 25 years. He's based in Washington, D.C. It's a nonprofit organization that actually do research on plant-based diets for health. And so he has a lot of information actually about soy on his website. If you Googled Dr. Neil Bernard and soy, but it actually shows that the receptor sites, if you're eating soy, that it doesn't take the bad estrogen in. It will somehow take the good estrogen or blocks it. Yeah. So I don't. I eat soy, you know, in the form of tofu and tempeh, which are not highly processed soy products. And I also, you know, I'll eat black soybeans. And it's not just all about soy. I mean, it's not like soy is not the only bean that I eat, but I don't avoid it either. I actually think it's good for you. I just don't do like soy pills or soy powders.
Is that Neil Bernard, B-E-R-N-A-R-D?
Yes, B-A-R-N-A-R-D, M-D. And actually I'm bringing, in conjunction with the University of New England, Dr. Neil Bernard is going to be coming to Portland on October 14th, and it's free to the public, so I encourage you all to, it's going to be at the big function hall in Westbrook. I guess they rented that, and yeah, it's going to be a great event.
Thank you for your work, and thank you for bringing Dr. Neil Bernard to Portland. And what, from your studies and your experience, what would you say is the #1 concern as far as deficiencies go for the general public?
Deficiencies when they're starting to follow a plant-based diet, or deficiencies in general?
Overall, yeah.
I think the biggest problem is our addiction to sugar. So getting off sugar is huge. And I actually do an 8-week program. I just finished one, but I have another one in the fall. It's an online program. And the first class is actually getting off sugar. And there are a lot of ways to do that, as far as some foods that we eat make us crave more sugar. And so, so I get into that. But sugar is the #1.
Do you have any desserts? I mean,
Yeah, that's a good question. I do. but now they're actually desserts. Before they were meals.
That's okay.
You know, I can remember like skipping dinner to go to, I'm trying to think of the name, it wasn't Haagen-Dazs, but it was something like that. But now when I do have a treat, it's usually like more of a once a week occurrence rather than,
So you do allow yourself to
oh
have
yeah,
occasional
yeah,
sugar?
yeah. I don't do white sugar, but I do some, I do, like sometimes I'll do a brown rice syrup as a sweetener. I do fruit juice sweetened desserts. I stay really strict because sugar was a big thing for me. You know, do I think that you have to get off it completely? I think if you can keep it minimal, that's good, but I just couldn't. So I had to really curtail that.
I'm going to ask that we just stop questions after
Okay.
Catherine, so
Yep.
that we can continue.
So, Meg, just welcome your thoughts around almond milk.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
think
do you think
al-
it's
I
too
think-
processed?
No, I think almond milk is a good substitute, non-dairy substitute. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.